Oil doesn't just power cars, it powers the world. Almost everything around you depends on it. Your food, your phone, the roads you travel on, the buildings you walk into. We do know how important this resource is to our economy, but it goes far deeper than that. In the most logical way ever, people think that when prices go up, the economy suffers. When prices go down, things get better. But that is not entirely the case. And as you've seen from the title of the subject, that is what we're going to be diving deeper into. Oil doesn't just affect the economy in a straight line. It is multifaceted, so to say, touching everything from prices to jobs to how much people spend to how governments react. And once those effects start spreading, they don't all move in the same direction. That's why the same oil price change can help one country and hurt another at the exact same time. For example, if an oil-rich country like Saudi Arabia sells oil to the world, higher prices are a win for them. More money comes in, governments spend more, businesses grow, and the economy expands. It's a win-win. But if a country like Japan or India depends on buying oil, those same higher prices become a problem. Everything becomes more expensive and the working class start to feel it in their daily lives. Then there are countries stuck in the middle, like the US of A. This can be both a blessing and a curse. When prices rise, parts of the economy benefit, especially the energy sector. Jobs are created, production increases, and investment flows in. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, everyone else pays more. Transport becomes expensive, goods cost more, and everyday life gets harder. Another way this shows up is through inflation. And this happens in two ways. First, the obvious one, fuel costs more, energy costs more, you feel it directly. But the second one is more subtle. When fuel becomes more expensive, it costs more to move goods, to run factories, to produce materials. And for that matter, businesses won't just absorb those costs or feel sorry and let things be. And therefore they pass on the baggage. Thus, prices go up across the board. And once that starts happening, the entire system reacts. People begin to spend less, businesses become more cautious, and governments step in, usually by raising interest rates to slow things down. But that creates another problem. Higher interest rates make borrowing expensive. Businesses invest less, consumers cut back even more, and suddenly the economy starts slowing down. In some cases, oil becomes so expensive that it chokes the very demand it depends on. Another interesting factor is in regards to transportation. This is where oil hits instantly, because again, using logic, planes, trucks, ships mostly rely on fuel to run, and fuel does take up a huge portion of their costs logistically. So when oil prices rise, transportation companies will do what is best for them. And so flights get more expensive, shipping costs rise, businesses have to pay more to move goods, and once again the cost finds its way back to us, the consumers. But even here, oil is not the only factor at play. For example, according to this article, they say that in 2022, the average price of diesel fuel in the US rose from $3 to $5 per gallon, hitting the truck industry, of course, very hard. But in addition to rising oil prices, the same period saw severe driver shortages caused by the pandemic, fluctuating demand and part supply issues, which further increased logistics costs. That means that when there's fewer manpower, you'll have to pay, I think, a little bit more premium to that, let's say for example, driver, to make a haste of things, right? It will make sense that these companies are going to have to pay more. I hope you're all on the same boat. If not, please do tell me in the comments where you did not understand. And if you're liking my content and you want to stick around, please do me the honors of subscribing. And I promise you, our content is gonna get better each and every time. Now let us get into the topic of geopolitics. I would highly suggest that you watch my video on the economy of war. I dive deeper on this subject and it is more out there, you know. So after this, please do go and watch it and tell me what you learned in the comments, right? But even so, let me give you a watered down version of that. When state conflicts, sanctions rise, this disrupts the flow of oil in a very big way, as we are seeing in the case of the Strait of Hormuz, because Strait of Hormuz is apparently where, like, I believe more than 50% of the global chain supply goes through. And when supply is threatened, prices react almost instantly, as we've seen in the case of the Iran-Israel-USA war. And we also saw that the price of a barrel of oil going from $80 or be it $70 to $120. Even putting war aside, there's another nuance to this factor. Sometimes restrictions or sanctions don't work the way people expect. Oil finds new buyers and new trade routes form. This can be seen in the case of Iran, who have had the world impose major sanctions on them. But even so, we get to see China playing a big power move here, as 90% of Iran's oil exports go to China, which reduces the overall effects of sanctions from the US and Europe. And of course, helps the economy of Iran. Other times, political decisions like tariffs slow down the global economy itself. This you see with the USA, as reported by the World Bank blogs in their 2025 article. They write, "We expect global trade growth to slow markedly this year and elevated policy uncertainty. We could see national appetites for trade restrictions further increase as countries revert to previously announced higher tariffs or expand retaliatory measures, creating broader spillovers. Such measures could prompt third markets to introduce their own trade restrictions to shield domestic industries, amplifying the dampening effect on trade flows and global demand." And of course, if higher tariffs are imposed on countries, this of course goes on to also the chain of oil and all that kind of stuff, and of course things again go up, and of course the consumers feel it, and of course this goes into a very weird spiral. If you want to understand more about tariffs and all that kind of stuff, why don't you go and watch Donny Harris? He does a very good job in explaining that. Let us now move on to another factor, which is, and here the oil price affects this ecosystem in a very interesting manner because it is really a core part of the economy. As we know, logically, oil used in factories is used for energy, materials, making plastics, chemicals, construction, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so rising oil prices directly increase costs for businesses. Transportation becomes more expensive, as we saw earlier, energy bills rise, and production processes require more inputs. The result is lower profits, reduced investment in expanding production, and in some cases, the closure of companies that can't compete. Another paradox that comes in mind is when oil prices fall, and the chain reaction is that this notion will boost production and economic growth. Sorry to burst your bubble, but that is not really how it works, because when oil prices drop sharply, it can make investment in the energy sector unprofitable. Shock, but the world is very weird, man. This then discourages new technologies and petrochemical projects, and even push oil producers, especially shale companies in the United States, can go into bankruptcy. This then leads to a broader consequence, which are job losses, regional recessions, and economic stabilities in areas dependent on oil. And so for the industry, the ideal is stability. Oil that is too expensive hampers production, while oil that is too cheap destabilizes markets. Industrialized countries therefore aim to manage oil prices and diversify energy sources. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. This is a very watered down version of this. I do not really want to sound academic, and if you do not like it, tell me why you do not like it. But even so, I hope you learned a thing or two. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.